Welcome to the course Build a Full Stack Application in Minutes with Node-RED. In our first lecture we will introduce what is Node-RED and what we're going to do in this course. We're going to build a media monitoring application, and we will do that by dividing it in a backend and an API and a front end. We will not need any kind of hosting or anything outside our computer. We will not require any kind of coding or prior knowledge of programming languages. How is that possible? Because we're going to use visual programming and we're going to use Node-RED. The only requirement it will be to install nodejs, which is an open source platform, but we will do that on the next lecture. Let's start by defining what's media monitoring. Media monitoring is something invented long time ago, in the past century, when, for example, a company A was investing in advertising products or services in newspapers, TV, or radio. Company A will hire at the same time Company B to monitor the media, and Company B will send in a monthly or weekly basis reports to Company A with exact information about when and how many times the advertisings appeared. This of course evolved in time, and companies used this not only for advertising but in general to be aware of what was happening on the media. With the invention of the internet, of course, the online media became more important. This includes of course online newspapers, microblogs, blogs, and social networks. And of course, internet made possible for companies to become paperless and migrate everything to a web application, so that Company A could access this application anytime and have access to dashboards, reports, or receive alerts immediately to react timely. But also this model kept evolving. Let's assume that there are many companies like Company A that are interested on the same service. So what would Company B do? Company B will create a front end for them, so they will all use the same web application but with different credentials, and they will access their information through a unique channel. Company B will use a backend to make the necessary adjustments and to fulfill the requirements of all these companies. So both backend and front end will be communicating through an API without interrupting the service at any moment. And this exactly is what is also known as full stack. So why is it called full stack? Because as you can see, it's conformed by many layers which are in the form of a stack. So in the backend, typically you will need to know programming languages like PHP, Ruby, Python, or Java, or C#. And in the front end you will use mainly JavaScript along with HTML and CSS. And also databases are part of the full stack, and even sometimes mobile applications for the most common operating systems. So when you hear that someone is looking for a full stack developer, they are actually looking for someone that knows all of this, which is crazy, right? Anyway, fortunately we're not gonna learn anything like this here, because we're gonna use visual programming, and we're gonna use Node-RED to connect this front end with the back end using building blocks. So we won't need to know programming languages like PHP, Ruby, or JavaScript. Perhaps we will need to copy and paste some HTML and link some external CSS, but no programming in this course. But apart from not coding, why visual programming is good? Well, I personally think that if we are capable of figuring out our application using diagrams and blocks, why can't we just use diagrams and blocks to deploy the application itself? So that's possible right now with this new paradigm of visual programming. Finally, if you search for Node-RED, you will find that it's intimately related with the Internet of Things. And indeed, Node-RED was created with the Internet of Things in mind. And because it's a lightweight application, it can run inside gateways or sensors. However, Node-RED is actually built over Node.js, which is a full programming language. So potentially everything that is available on Node.js is available on Node-RED. And it includes a lot of models for web development, and that's why we're going to use it for web development. However, if you think about it, everything can be a thing. It's not that only sensors like weather, traffic, or home automation are things. Actually, instant messages, emails, posts, news, videos, etc. they are all things as well. And more generally speaking, web requests and responses are things as well, and that's what we will be working with. So it seems that we're entering an age where everything is converging into IoT. And it's a good idea. I strongly suggest you to start thinking as everything can be a thing. You will be able to combine things like news, media, robots, devices, transactions, everything in the same place, and create new things out of the things that already exist there on the internet. So just think that everything that travels in the internet is a message, and the message can only be either data or a command. Alright, so enough about theory now. In our next lecture, we will start installing Node.js, and inside Node, we will install Node-RED and build our first Hello World example. Alright, see you then. This is our second lecture, and here we will do a couple of things. We will install Node-RED and also create our first application, a Hello World example. So what are the installation steps? First of all, we need to download and install Node.js. We can do that by logging into this URL, nodejs.org. This website will automatically detect your operating system, so you don't have to worry about that. I suggest you to always choose the option on the left, the LTS version. So we'll click here and then we will save the file on our computer. On the desktop is fine. So once it is finished, we can simply just go and execute it. Accept everything, run it, accept the terms in the license agreement, and go ahead and install everything. So now that Node is installed, we need to open command line. Command line, you can find it using any of these names depending on your operating system. For example, in Windows I can use command or simply CMD for short, and then I will open this black window. Next, we will need to install Node-RED model. I forgot the command to install this model, but I can simply search in the internet how to install Node-RED install. I will find this command here will help me install. If you are on a Mac or a Linux machine, you will need to use sudo. Otherwise, you can just simply copy this, go to your command line and paste it and run it. Alright, so now that Node-RED is installed, let's review some of the basic information. To launch Node-RED, we need to open the command line and type node-red. So we type here cmd to open the command line, and here we type Node-RED. We need to wait for it to load, and when it's running, we can see this last message that it says is running on this URL. We can copy here and paste it in our browser. We can just simply go and type it. It's 127.0.0.1 colon 1880, and here this is Node-RED and it's running now. However, if you don't want to type this number, we just simply type localhost. So instead of using this number, can simply use localhost. It's easier for you to remember. So if I try this, I'll get the same page. If we want to stop Node-RED, it won't stop just by closing the browser. We will need to close the command line. As long as this command line is open, Node-RED will be working. If you want to stop Node-RED, you can simply do Ctrl+C if you're on a Windows or a Linux machine, or Command+C if you're on a Mac. Or if you forget about this, you just simply click here and close it. If you close that window, you will see that Node-RED will not work anymore. So let's go back and open it again. So now let's go to our first example. What we're gonna do, we're gonna create a hello world example. We can do that just by simply dragging HTTP and then a template, and finally an HTTP response. This is all the blocks that we need for this example. I always, when I work with Node-RED, I always like to show the grid, so it's up to you if you like that too. You can also check this to snap things into the grid, so you can see this beautiful grid. Then we will just connect the dots. Also, it's a very good practice to name your flow, so here we will call it hello world. So we will start by configuring the first node. We will need to create a URL for this. Let's call it hello. What we need is to answer with some HTML. Return some plain text in the format of HTML. If you don't know HTML, you can simply type HTML basic page. You can simply copy and paste this. This is the most basic HTML document that you can see. So let's change this and put hello world, and then we can click deploy here. So if we go to localhost hello, we can see our application running. As you can see, it's very easy. It's a very simple thing. Only 3 nodes here, and you have your first web application. The next thing to do would be to add a style with CSS, and we will do it by linking an external CDN. CDN stands for Content Delivery Network, an URL where you can always find a file. We can simply type Bootwatch, which is a website that contains free themes for Bootstrap. So as you can see, there are many skins here that you can use. We will choose Slate, which is my favorite. So Slate looks like this. So what we want is to find a CDN for Bootwatch. So if we type here, we will find this, where you can find the CDN for this templates. So let's copy the HTML link and back to our application. What we need here is to quickly open here and add this. As you can see, I just copied and pasted this. Whether you should use HTTPS or HTTP, it's a good question. So if you want to avoid that problem, you can just simply start from the /. We deploy again, and what we'll see now is that our application looks much better. Now it has the style that we took from Bootwatch. On the next lecture, what we're going to do is we're going to start reading RSS feeds from online newspapers, detect keywords on the fly, and send automatic notifications. Alright, see you then. This is our third lecture and first approach to online media monitoring. In this lecture, we will create an RSS news reader. We're going to read RSS feeds from online newspapers, detect keywords on the fly, and send automatic notifications if those keywords match. For this example, we're going to focus just in sports newspapers, and we're going to track only one team of NBA basketball, which is the Golden State Warriors. We're going to use these 4 keywords, which are: Warriors is the name of the team, Golden State is a nickname for the city of San Francisco, Stephen Curry is the main star, and Steve Kerr is the head coach. But first of all, what are RSS and Atom? Both are types of web feeds. People refer to them also as site summary or syndication, and they are based on XML. So we're going to use them because suppose that there are a lot of online newspapers that we want to monitor, but they all present information in different format. We're going to use a standardized format, which is RSS. This format also gives us direct access to these 4 things that are essential for all the news, which are a headline, an abstract, a link to read the complete article, and a timestamp. So let's go and open Node-RED. Let's create a new flow and name it RSS Reader. Here you'll see there is one node called feed parser, and this is what we want to use. It's a very simple node. We only need to fill this with an URL and put the interval of the minutes we want to refresh it. Let's use 1 minute. So where do we find the URLs? You can simply search for sports RSS feeds. And here you'll find most popular online newspapers. For example, let's start with the first one, ESPN. And here you can simply go top headlines. As soon as you see this XML, means that this is actually the RSS channel, and you can also confirm that because it starts with RSS. Just copy this and paste it here. Let's put a short name, ESPN. Connect the debug here to read the output. I also recommend always to use complete message object. And also when you're working with multiple workflows, it's a better idea to choose only to deploy modify flows. Let's connect this and deploy it. We look into the debug window, we can see each of the news, and they are parsed as an article with a title, description, link, and so on. So now what we want is to look for some keywords. For that we're going to use switch. This node allows us to look for property of our object. In this case what we're looking is for the description, article.description. We're going to look if it contains Warriors, or if it contains Golden State, or if it contains Curry, or if it contains Kerr. We also need to add one option, any other, to send it to the 5th port. So as you can see now, we have a node that has 5 ports, and what we're going to do is to send an email if the keywords match. For that there's a node called email. So let's configure it. Now that we have our credentials here, we need to see what inputs do we need to pass to this node. Click into info. We need to fill the payload with the body of the message and topic with the subject. Also we need to provide from with an address that we can identify. For that we need a change node. Recalling from here, we want to catch any of the first 4 outputs. So I'm going to wire the first 4. If it matches any of these 4, we will send an email. Otherwise, we're going to dispose that result. Also note that if this word comes with an uppercase like this, it won't match because we are only using lowercase. To fix that, we can simply switch this to regex and do that for all, and also check the ignore case checkbox. Also, if you know regex, you can merge all these 4 in just one expression if you know how to do that. But we're going to keep it like this right now. What we want now is to set the payload would be the body of our email, would be the description of the article. So we can simply say article description, and as a subject we would like to have the title there. Finally, the field from to be something like this. So once we have these three rules, we can simply connect this here. This is my email. And here we see that we have an RSS alert, and see that there is something about the Warriors. However, there is something missing, the link where I can read the whole story of the article. Unfortunately, it's not possible to say, okay, something like this. So I'm going to delete this here. We're not going to handle the description here, and we're going to add a template here. So we will open our template. We're going to use a mustache template. You can simply just put here article description and then read more, put the link. So what is mustache? Mustache is a library of JavaScript that uses these curly brackets twice. So with a little bit of imagination, you can see a mustache here. Let's just save this and deploy again and look at our inbox. We can see that now that we have the description, the summary of the article, and also we have this read more with the link. However, the link here, as you can see, is not well rendered. Let's take a look at the info box for this node and see. By default, Mustache will escape the HTML entities. So to prevent this, we need to use triple braces. Triple braces here. Try again. Now we refresh this. This seems to work. If I click on it, I can see the link is working. So let's go and add more feeds. We already did for ESPN. Let's go for the next one, which is Fox Sports. All headlines, and then we can copy this. Find our feed parser here. Paste the URL. Let's set 1 minute. Fox. We can simply just wire here and deploy it and go to our email and see now that we have, this is the one from ESPN, and we also have one from Fox Sports. If I click here, I can see this one is from Fox. And as you can see, there's one problem here, that these alerts will keep triggering over and over because there's no logic to keep track of the alerts that have been sent, but we are gonna fix that on the next lecture. So let's review what are the inadequacies of our first approach. First of all, alerts get triggered over and over. Also, changes in our configuration right now require that we have to deploy the application again, and therefore we interrupt the service. And this is because we are following this schema where we are doing the configuration directly into Node-RED. On our next lecture, we're going to build a back-end web interface so that we will manage the RSS feeds and keywords on real time. We will replace this configuration here with the backend, and also we will design a better logic for the notifications so they don't get triggered over and over. We're going to create a front end to display the content. Thank you very much. Welcome to our fourth lecture. Here we're gonna design our backend. Recall from our last lecture we had this design. We're gonna implement a database and we're gonna use SQLite. SQLite is a good option in this case because it's lightweight, it's portable, so the whole database only uses one file and uses a simplified syntax compared with other flavors of SQL. We will need to define 3 tables. In our first table, named feed, we're going to store 2 columns, a name or identifier and a URL of our feeds. On the second table, the keywords that we want to monitor. We're going to combine these 2 tables so that Node-RED can send notifications, but at the same time we will want to store these results in a table and create one column. If it's true, is that we already sent a notification, and if it's false, is that we still need to send that notification. So let's go and open Node-RED. We'll need to install a new module. Go to Manage Palette, and here in Install, we're going to search for SQLite. We click here. Now that our module is installed, Let's go and create a new flow and name it db admin. You're gonna search for our new node and double click to configure it. We need to provide the location of our database. We can simply find a place on our computer and create a folder, monitor. So we can copy this path, paste it here and choose a name for our database, monitor. You can either put SQLite, .SQLite or simply db, or you can use the extension that you want, it doesn't matter. And we add that, let's name this db. So now what we need is to create 3 tables. We're going to do that by injecting a SQL command. And in topic we can put create table. We only need to provide the name of the table and the names of the columns of the table. Let's repeat this for the other 2 tables. For this table we only need 1 column called expression. And finally a table for all the matches. And we will store the link, title, description, and 1 column called sent. Also, it's a good trick here to specify link to be unique. And then we can just simply wire this here, deploy, and if we trigger these 3, we have just created the 3 columns. It's a good idea to have one in case we want to erase the table and start all over again, called drop. Let's also put some labels here to know that these are for deletion and these are for creation. And we have our database running. So now that we have our 3 tables, need to specify a backend, and this will be the URL where we manage our feeds. We can actually reuse our past flow of hello world. So in this flow we'll put all our web requests, and let's go and change this, instead of hello, monitor feed. Here on our template we're gonna reuse this because we already have the bootswatch CSS, and remove this paragraph. Remember the name of the template is slate. Let's go back and see. So what we want is to show a table, so let's go here, just copy the source code of a table and paste it here. So if we deploy this and go localhost monitor feed, so if you know Bootstrap, you can simply put a div here, class container, and let's remove all the rows that we don't want. Let's remove this. The first column will be name, then URL, and we'll leave 1 column for deleting the rows. Yeah, we have only 3 columns. Next we will make a call to the database. So we're going to insert this here and use a fixed statement. So we're going to select everything from feed. We need to see the output of our database. Let's fix this error here. Select, sorry, I forgot to put this here. So if we see the output, the payload comes in an array which is empty because we don't have information on the table. So let's go and create a new endpoint. This time the method will be post because we want to create a form. We'll put this temporarily here, and on the template we will need to add a form here. So let's open some space here and create a form. So let's take an input from here. So here you see the forms. We need a text input. And paste it here. Need to change the name here. This is for name. We don't need a placeholder and a name, and this is not a specific type. This label is for name, and do one for the URL. So if we deploy again, we see that we now have a form. Now we need a button to submit the form. Let's take a look at the input here when we send the form. Test name, test URL. When we click add, we see that inside our payload we have our variables here. So what we want is to insert this information into the database. We can do that with a simple template. With this simple statement. And then send it to our database. Let's just copy this. And in this case we're not using a fixed statement, we're taking it from topic. So we need to make sure that we're sending this on the topic. We want to read the output here and see the results. Read that from here. So we can see on the payload that now we can read the database and see the results that we just ingested. So we need our template to be able to read on the table. We're going to loop inside our payload, and this is with this special character, the pound key. This is how we close it. We need to change this to mustache, and then we can see this specific syntax. Where you can read more about it, just click here on the info box, and there's a link here where you can see how you can loop inside a list, like here. So we're going to loop inside our list. We're going to show here the name, the URL, and here we would like to add a link to delete. Go back to our template and look for a button. So what about this? We can use this one, the red one. Let's copy that and paste it here. We don't want to use button, we will use link. So we can change that, and let's leave it like this for now. Delete. Now if we deploy this, yeah, we can see now the table is displaying this. The button is not working though, so let's configure this button by a simple trick here in SQLite, is that you can retrieve the raw ID. So now that you have it, it's simply you can call it from here. Now we will need to create some endpoint. Let's create a subfolder called delete and then the ID here. If we refresh this, a different URL where it's supposed to delete it, but we haven't done it yet, so let's go back and create it. A get method, so I'm gonna copy this from here. So in Node-RED it's possible to read the params if you use column here, row, and the name of your variable. We need to send an output, and we see now is the params that you're sending, and this is here. So let's add a template similar to this for deleting. So we need to know where's the path of our ID, and it's inside rec, params, and then row ID. We can reuse this, send the command to the same database, so there will be no need for this wire here. We can actually delete, so we can create rows here and delete them. So let's go ahead and add our original feeds. We can simply go here and copy this. This will be ESPN, Fox Sports. Oh, but there's a problem here. If you remember, we need to tell Mustache not to encode the HTML entities. Done very easy if we put triple braces here. Let's delete again. Now we can see this is working. Fox Sports. So let's go ahead and add more. What about CBS Sports? We can also choose directly NBA. CBS. SI.com. Alright, for now. Now what we can do is make this form look better, because the size of this input is exaggerated. This course is not about Bootstrap, but if you know how to do this, you can just simply add a div class row and then div class column MD6 and make two columns of 6 units, so this will divide half and half. Put the table on the first container and the form on the second one. And we'll see now that this looks, it has now 2 columns, and this adapts of course to different devices. So if you are on a tablet or on a cell phone, you will see this differently. This is one of the beautiness of Bootstrap. But we forgot to put this inside of the container, so there you go. We already created a backend for feed, and we need to do the same for keyword. Here what you can do is, let's first put a comment here. We can simply just copy this and paste it here and just change everything for keyword. However, a quick trick you can do here is you can select everything, export to your clipboard, and then open your favorite text editor, paste it, and replace all feed for keyword. Copy everything again, import from clipboard, paste it, import. However, there are some things we still need to change. For example, the name of the columns. So here we know that for keywords it's different. There's only one column. Same for the insert command and the delete command. Well, not for the delete command. Now when we deploy this, we can actually just try keyword, and we'll see we have the same thing. We can add our keywords here. Alright, so the next step is that we have already created this backend and we have access from where we can manage our database. The next step will make Node-RED to read the feeds and the keywords from the database, and also create a small logic to make the notifications be aware of what's already there on the database and not repeat over and over. Let's retake our old reader and put a comment here. We're gonna now use a different approach because we will not use these nodes anymore. We'll start adding a timestamp and first reading the keywords. We can simply copy a database from here to read the keywords. So we click here, we can see our keywords are there. Now we will need to create expression to find any of the keywords, and we will use JSON-ATA. We're going to define a new property just named keyword, and here we will look for this J, which looks like some music notation, and open the editor. The best way to test this is just copy the object here and paste it as an example, then just click here to beautify it. And so what we need is to read all the expressions that we have on the object. Payload, expression. So as you can see from here, with this very simple expression on JSON-ATA, I'm changing all this object in just of strings. Now there are some functions that we can use. There's one called join. Copying this syntax, it says join, then the array, and then the separator. I'm going to put a pipe, get this result. So what I'm doing is in regular expressions, this pipe means or. If you find Warriors, Golden State, Curry, Kerr, NBA, any of these with just one expression. And now we will read the feeds, the URL of the feeds. We can simply copy this from here, from the feeds. When I inject a signal, I can see that I have a property called keyword and a payload. In this case, I have 4 URLs: one ESPN, Fox Sports, CBS Sports, SI. So what I want is to split this object in 4 different objects, and I can do that with this node here called split. This will try these 3 approaches. From an array, it will create 4 different objects of length of 1. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different objects, and each object will have only one URL, and all of them will have the same expression keyword. Use HTTP request here, but this requires to have a property called URL. So we will need to move what we have in payload URL to the property URL. For each URL, I'm getting this XML that is the RSS. So next step would be to parse the XML, and now it will put that on the payload RSS channel, first channel, item, and then we'll see these are all the news from each of the feed. With this node change, to relocate, following this is payload RSS, then channel, item, and this array of 10 is what I want to move simply to payload. all my entries for each feed. Next, what I need is to split these articles again, so I will use again split. So for every object I have only one article with the title, description. Copy the switch from here, and we can remove all of this, just keep one. Instead of looking for a string, we can use this property here, keyword. So for some reason it's inside an array, look for the first member of the array, the index 0, and name this match. So these are the only the results that actually match, and we can see on the description that we have some of the words we're looking for. So the final step will be to insert these in a database. From here we can copy any of these. So in this case I recommend you to add ignore. In case we have repeated links, this command will be ignored. We need to put 0 here. And also we don't want mustache to encode 3 braces and the other 2 columns, which are the title, description. We keep only 2 braces. And finally there is a 4th column which is sent. We're gonna just put 0 as false and 1 as true. So yeah, we can see here this will be our command, this, and 0 as sent. We can simply copy this from here, and now we can simply go and ingest all of this into our database. Finally, we will want to send notifications. We don't need this anymore. But this time we don't want notifications to be every minute. We can actually define just a specific time. So what about lunchtime? From Monday to Friday, 1 day. Copy this from here. We are reading all the objects that we stored on the database. However, we want only to read those that have not been sent, where sent is equal 0, and then split this payload times 34 different messages. And here we have an object for each entry. The description will be now on payload and link here. However, as soon as we send the email, we also want to update the database and say, well, we already sent it. Simply we can copy this. We can reuse this node. Update match set sent equals to true, where row ID, and this is not an insert but an update. But of course we don't want to send a burst of emails, even if it's just once a day. We can read it before the split. We want to send just one email with the 27 articles. The topic this time will be daily report. And here on our template we would like to iterate on payload. So this would be the body of our message. Now let's send the email. And we can see we have the daily report here. Of course they need a little bit of formatting, but Here are all the 27 stories. If we run this again, now we update the database that with the information that we already sent the emails. It will be sent one more time. But if we trigger this again, an empty message because there are no feeds. This can be fixed with a switch. So we look at the payload, and if it's empty, we'll send it to 1, otherwise send to the port 2, empty, wire this from the second. If we run this again, see there's no output here, and we're not getting more emails. So on our next lecture, what we're going to do is we're going to build a front end to display the content, and we will expose an HTML front end and also an API that uses JSON. Thank you very much. See you then. Welcome to our 5th lecture, where we will design our front end. We basically have this application design, and now we're going to build a front end to display the content. So let's open Node-RED. We can start by copying an existing endpoint and do some changes to read the table match. We don't need a form anymore, only a table. Let's change the width of the column. 12 means 100% of the width. And here we need 3 columns, a headline, summary, and 1 column for sent. Same here, so one will be description, a title. But we want title to be a link in case we want to read the whole story. And whether it has been sent or not. Let's change the heading for latest stories. And check it out. So now here we see a table with all the items that have been matched by our keywords. In this column we can see that some have been sent already and some haven't. But let's add a line to sort these by the newest at the top and the oldest at the bottom. The newest story is at the top and the oldest at the bottom. Now let's add a navigation bar at the top. We can do that by looking at our template. So we can copy this one and paste it. Let's customize the buttons. Here we have our navigation bar at the top. Let's now implement the searching function. We do that simply by adding a method here, equals post, and action pointing to this same frontend. And the name for our variable will be search. And copy this and create a post method. Let's see how these variables look like. So here is the variable we're looking for. We can reuse this SQL line and paste it here, and add a line for selecting where title like payload dot search, or the same for description. And actually we can merge these two. And using the topic. Let's not forget to put topic here. So now we can search something like Durant, all the entries that have the word Durant, or for example injury. But of course we would like to have the word here to see what we have just searched. So let's do that. We can do that here on the input. and set the value equals payload search. However, the problem is that this node will override the payload property. We can also read it from rec body search. So let's change it for rec body search. Now if I type this, I can see it stays on the text input. Let's also add a margin below the navigation bar. In Bootstrap, that is as easy as just putting margin bottom equals 4 as part of the style of the navigation bar. And there it goes. There's also a problem here. If I make the display smaller, the buttons of the menu will be collapsed on this button, but the button is not working. So that can be fixed by adding two libraries. One is jQuery, and the other one is the Bootswatch bundle. So let's search for Bootswatch bundle CDN. The HTML. We can remove the protocol part. Just make sure that you call first the jQuery, then the bundle, and finally the CSS of Bootstrap. Now we see it's working now. Let's go ahead and change these zeros and ones for something more intuitive. That can also be done by searching for a library called Awesome Font. And preferably at the end of the head. Now that we have that, let's search for Awesome Font check icon. We simply copy this, and instead of send here, we can use the same syntax for lists. And now we see a checkbox or nothing. However, if I click on any of these buttons, I can go to the different page, but I don't see the navigation bar there. One solution will be to copy the navigation bar from this template and paste it in these two, but the problem will be that for any change we want to make, we'll have to do that 3 times. So a better solution for that is to separate the templates. So I'm going to copy this and paste it 3 times. And in the first one, I will only leave the navigation bar. In a property called template navbar. Then another one just for the head. And call it template head. And finally one for the HTML. From here I will simply call head, then the navbar, and finally the body. Then I wire this, and as a template we will only keep our body and place it in template body. So now we can rewire these two by just keeping the bodies. And we don't need this, we can send everything to here. Let's check it out now. Now I can navigate through my application using a common navigation bar. Now, what if we don't want to see this in a table but more as a showcase? We can create an additional front end called monitor showcase and add it to our navigation bar. Because we are sending this through the same channel, we will need to add a conditional here. On our conditional, we will look for the URL. Here, this variable which is inside rec. If it's equal to monitor, we'll send it to port 1. But if it's equal to monitor showcase, we'll send it to port 2. We can also choose to stop after the first match to make our application a bit faster, and we can copy this and create a template for our showcase. Let's go back to our template and find a card. Let's choose one of these cards and paste it here. Iterate through payload and create one card per item. Let's move the title here as a header. We don't need this line. And here we will put the description. Now, instead of showing a check, we can do something fancy like just changing the color. And put this inside a column. Small 6 units, medium 4 units, and large 2 units. And everything inside a row. Let's also change this margin. Instead of bottom equals 3, let's do margin on all sides equals 2 and add some indentation. If we check it now, we can see now this button showcase. I forgot to wire this to the output. And here we can see our showcase. However, we don't want to see the navigation bar in the showcase. For that, we can simply rewire this and bypass the navigation bar. And now we don't see the navigation bar. Let's also change the light gray for the new ones and the dark gray for those already sent. I can simply do that by using the negation instead of the boolean. Caret means negation, so we'll do the opposite. And we can also display this in a full screen. If you're a big fan of the Golden State Warriors, you can also have this on your room. And finally, let's add an API. We can simply copy one of these and let's name it API match. And simply wire it through the same thing. In our switch, we will need to add one conditional, this time for monitor API match, to send to the third port. And our third port doesn't need any of the HTML templates, so we can simply wire it directly to the output of the response. Let's try it here. And that's it. We can see the same thing but in JSON format. In case we want to search using the API. So this will work exactly the same, but in order to test it, we will need to use a tool like Postman. Here we need to choose the verb post, then localhost, our port, monitor API match, and then as a body search value equals injury. Yeah, I forgot to put here API match. We try it again, and now we see the same 5 results that we will see if we simply go here and put injury. We just finished creating our front end that consisted on a simple monitor with a table and also a showcase for marketing purposes. We also created very quickly an API endpoint. APIs are very important because they extend the capabilities of our application, so this can be used immediately by other apps, including mobile apps, of course. The case of analytics, which includes business intelligence or machine learning, which are very popular right now. I always recommend to use Node-RED on hackathons, because while you are working on extracting and transforming information, another team can start working with the data of your application. Another very common scenario is to find another API available on the internet and create an interesting mashup. On our next lecture, we will learn how to create a web feed, because so far our application can only connect to sources that have an RSS channel. But what if there is one source that doesn't have that channel? Use Node-RED to create that RSS channel, and immediately that will be compatible with our application. Thank you very much. Welcome to our 6th lecture called RSS creation. We face the problem that our application can only read RSS feeds. But in this lecture, we'll learn how to create web feed for sources that don't have an RSS channel. And we will do that using Node-RED as well. One source that I like a lot about basketball is called Pro Basketball Talk. I like this website, but it doesn't have RSS feeds. So what we're gonna do is create a new flow and name it RSS NBC Sports for short. So we'll start by calling an HTTP request and pasting this URL. Let's see what we get here is, as payload, we can see the HTML code of that website. But it's easier if we just type Ctrl-U on our web browser. What we want will be to find where are the news and how they are structured. In this case, I can search for one of these words and see if I can find it. Nick North says timeout. So here we are. What we would like to find is what is the smallest unit of HTML code that contains an article. So for me, it seems like this is one article and this is the other. So what we need is a special node called HTML. Here we need to provide our selector. So this node supports either CSS or jQuery selectors, which means that if I identify the class, I can simply type div dot the name of the class. Choose to split this in multiple messages. And what I get is one object per message. And in the payload, I will have that HTML that contains one article. The next step will be to extract the elements. Let's add some comments and rename this as div so that we know what we're doing. So let's extracting the title. The title is inside a div whose class is story title, and inside of it there's a link. I could simply put div then the class space a. In this case we don't want the HTML content but only the text of the content, and again send multiple messages. But we don't like to override the payload because we still need to extract more information from it, so I will put this on a property item title. and name this title. If I run it again, I'll get exact the same number of objects, but now here at the bottom I will have an item property with a title. We can copy this and replicate that for the link. The link is located on the same place as the title, but it's not inside the body of the HTML tag. It's inside actually a property of the tag. So in this case I can leave this same, but instead of taking the text I will look for the attributes in this case. Here I have now, oh, I forgot to put this on a different property, otherwise I'll be overwriting it. I have a title and a link here. Next we need to extract the description. In a property called item description. So we can see the description is inside a class called story summary. We call it like this and run it again. Here we have 3 of them. Also there's one important element on all RSS feeds, the date of the article. It's supposed to be here, story timestamp, however for some reason it's empty. Here in the URL, the date is part of the URL, so we can actually extract it from there. Because we already have the link, we're going to extract it from there. I'm going to call this date, the property item date, JSON ATA again, to create that from an expression. Remember, always copy the whole object, paste it here, beautify it, simply, in this case what I want is item.link.ref. Now what I want is not the link but just these 3 numbers. Here we look at our reference of functions, and there is one called replace, which means that I can type replace the string, then the expression, and then the replacement. D, which means digit, then slash, parentheses, 2 other digits, then another 2 digits, we close parentheses, slash, another 2 digits. And we fill with a wildcard at the end and at the beginning. Now to extract these 3 parentheses we can just refer to them 1-2-3, and we have just extracted the date. Check it one more time. Here on our item we have a title, we have the link here, the date and the description. Next step will be to put everything together again. This node join can be set into automatic mode if all our messages are configured with the property parts. To explain that, let's check out this diagram. In Node there are many nodes that can perform split. So from one single object, a node can create multiple objects that are also JSON objects. However, these functions add some metadata to each object in the property called parts, which includes their index, the total count of objects, and a signature. If these were only 4 objects, Node-RED will put something like this. This is especially useful if we want to merge all the objects back again, because they are not sent in parallel. They are actually sent one after the other. And some objects can get delayed for different reasons. So the node join will look into these parts to put everything together again. However, we want join to use the metadata that was generated by this node here. What we need then is to place that property temporarily on a variable by simply doing this. We can say move parts to _parts and do the opposite just before the join. And bypass all the metadata that was created by these nodes. However, we cannot use automatic because our data is not located in payload, it is actually on item. We need to create an array. Now we have a single object with a property item that has an array of 50 objects, and each object is an article. Next, we will need to create an RSS response. We can do that by searching for the RSS node. If we don't have it installed, we can simply go here on Manage Palette, search for RSS. Let's install it. Now that we have it, let's put some comments. And let's configure this. Unfortunately, this node doesn't have any description on how to configure it. In this case, we will look at the website, go back to Manage Palette, under Install, RSS, and we click here to go to the official website of the model. It says it's using the RSS model. So let's click here, and this is what we need. So let's configure this. We need to provide a title. In this case, the title will be Pro Basketball Talk. Because there's no actual, we'll provide the one that we are creating, so that will be located on localhost RSS NBC Sports. Next, we need to provide a site URL, which will be this, and the rest is optional. Now for each item, we need to provide a title, which is it needs to be inside a payload. So let's put this on hold just for a second. We first need to put our items into payload. That can be done just by saying move item to payload. All our articles are inside payload. And then when we configure this, now we can say title, it's actually in title. Description is inside description. URL is inside link, but inside link href. Git can be the same as URL in this case. The rest is optional, but we also need to provide date. So date is in date. Now we can see as a payload we have an XML, which is an RSS. Next step will be to transform this in a web service. In RSS NBC Sports. And add an HTTP response and check it out from our browser. We can see the response, but it's not being displayed as an RSS, and that's because we need to add a header here. So we'll search for RSS header, and it seems like this is the one it should be. Let's call this header. And we need to set headers content type equals to RSS XML. So if we try again, now we see the XML. So let's go back to our application. And now we can add a new feed, which will be copied from here. NBC Sports. And we have that here. So that was the end of the course, but before saying goodbye, please don't forget to post all your questions on the Q&A section, and also leave any feedback that you have, things that you liked or you didn't like. And also for the next course, if you have any special request or idea, feel free to let me know. There are plenty of different applications that we can do with Node-RED. For example, how to use Node-RED in cloud servers. If you like to explore more about the Internet of Things, If you are more into analytics or business intelligence, how you can create dashboards and reports from here or anything. Thank you very much.